But Mark, let's move on into our final topic before we get to our Super Bowl picks to end the show. And this is a special one because we've got a double first here. Not only is this a Patreon segment, and this is the first Patreon segment for Shane, but also our first non-U.S. caller, our first non-U.S. patron, Shane, or I'm going to say it like I always say, because I know he's not Shane McMahon, but I'm going to say it anyways, Shane O'Mac calling us all the way from Canada. Shane, first off, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being a patron.
Problem.
How you doing tonight?
I am doing great.
Well, I bet you are. We're going to talk about your team, the team that every time on Twitter, Shane's messaging us, what do you think about Frank Reich and the Colts? And I'm just going to get to and ask you, frankly, right off the bat, Shane, who deserves the most credit for the Colts' success this season? Because I'll be honest, me as a non-Colts fan, I did not see them being as good as they were this year in 2018.
For me, the most credit, I'm going to give it to two people, okay?
Okay.
I'm going to share the credit. One has to go to Frank Reich, and then the next guy who deserves a lot of credit has to be GM Chris Ballard. Because if you look at the offseason he had, he was heavily criticized for the moves that he did not make, right? So a lot of people, like, if you look at NFL Network, like this last offseason, there were so many people picking the Colts to go 2-14, 3-13 because of the moves that Colts didn't make because they had over $100,000 or $100 million in cap space. But with Frank Reich, it's that quick passing game that he brings, which looked very familiar. Like it was very similar to what Philly ran in the Super Bowl, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would go 50-50 with Chris Ballard and Frank Reich. But that offensive line really helped Andrew Luck and being able to get that ball out of his hands really quickly.
Yeah, I think that offensive line, I'm glad you bring them up because I think they deserve a lot of credit. For as clean as they were able to keep Andrew Luck, that is incredibly valuable. And it's something that for a guy who was injured, tried to get back into it but couldn't really get back in because he didn't give himself the time to heal. You know, that's so incredibly important to keep him healthy. There's a lot of credit that needs to go around. I mean, you got a GM who makes the right decisions. You've got a head coach who coaches the team well, who gets everybody performing to the level they should be. You look at a team that was kind of underperforming itself for a while and being able to bring that forward and get more out of them, especially when at the beginning of this season, things weren't looking the hottest for the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, you get to, let's see, you had that 4-game losing streak when you're a team that's 5-1 going into that Bills game. And it looks like yet another disappointing season, but no, it just turned around and they were able to go on a great win streak, followed by another win streak into the playoffs. So I think that Frank Reich deserves probably the most credit, although there's a lot of credit to go around in a lot of places, because he was able to get this team moving, even when they were starting to not do as well as they had hoped, getting everybody to turn it around, perform better, give more to the team, but also just learn the offense, learn what they want, learn what they need to do, and become a better team because of it. So the one person, Frank Reich, although I will say one thing, it is pretty easy, at least easier, when you've got a certain Andrew Luck out there.
Yeah, and I mean, there's part of me that wants to give Andrew Luck the credit. Not like, yes, he is the main reason, but like the thing that I was actually talking to, so I did something this weekend that I haven't done in a long time. I went back to my alma mater to call a basketball game, and the SID at my alma mater is an Indiana Pacers fan. And he was even saying, like, if you think about Indiana sports, like, go back with it. Peyton Manning injury, Andrew Luck injury, now the Victor Oladipo injury. Just seems like anywhere in Indianapolis sports, you can find an injury that has happened to their team. And many people before this season, I mean, you and I even on this podcast, Mark, were like, oh, well, is Andrew Luck going to come back? What kind of Andrew Luck are we going to see? How long? Like, we were all concerned that, oh, my God, he's not throwing real footballs. He's throwing miniature footballs. He's not even throwing real footballs. And to me, I think there needs to be a little credit for Andrew Luck to go out and play the way he did.
His best year.
Exactly. It was his best year. But it's hard because I want to give credit to Andrew Luck. I want to give credit to Frank Reich. But, like, to me, it all comes down to Ballard. And the reason why is I look at the last two draft classes for this Colts team. Going out in 2017 with that 15th pick and going, we're going to take Malik Hooker. We're going to go ahead because that was a pick where they didn't have to go with Malik Hooker there. They could have went different ways. And then with me this past year, kind of nailing it down where it's like not only did you get Quentin Nelson with the 6th overall pick, you also got Darius Leonard, who turned into a great pick in the 2nd round. So, I mean, the question that I want to kind of throw at you, Shane, you being the Colts fan in the room, is you've had two good draft classes from Ballard. Do you expect that just to be even better this year in 2019? And what are you kind of, now that you're focusing on the draft, where do you think Ballard's going to go to keep the success going?
Honestly, I think we need another receiver, to be honest. Because if you look at, like, when teams locked down T.Y. Hilton, we pretty much had nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think we need more help with the pass rush because we can't rely on that secondary to shut down, especially with the scheme that our DC runs. It's not very, like, secondary friendly, if you know what I mean, because it's cover 2. So It's very reliant on having a good pass rush, being able to rush 4 up front.
And there's certainly going to be a lot of options to kind of help out for that. Even with the Colts not being at the very top of the draft, they're going to have plenty of options for pass rush, but they're also going to be in a really nice prime spot for that wide receiver if that's the option that they go in. You know, it's interesting when you look at the Colts team because they were looking so hot and they were looking like a team that could go to the Super Bowl as they were storming right into the playoffs. And then they just hit the brick wall. And then things just kind of fell apart. And what it reminds you is that despite the team being really good and looking really good, they're just not there yet. And they need another good draft class. And honestly, another good draft class might be all it really takes to get them to that point where they can take that step forward.
Well, and that's like a question that, because I know, Mark, I said it to you maybe like 2 weeks ago. Shane, I'll ask it to you is, as a Colts fan, do you believe or are you starting to see like, you know what, this Colts team, this could be the start of the Colts dynasty, where if we look back and like, oh man, they win this and this and this, and we're looking back at maybe a Colts dynasty, we would look back and go, man, that 2018 season, this was the start of it. Is that how special this last season could be for the Colts?
I think it started to sound special. It's funny you say dynasty because Colin Cowherd actually said that like a week ago on his show or something.
It's probably where I got it from, I'll be completely honest.
But I'll make a comparison here. The 2017 Colts draft class is I think, are building stones like the 2017 Saints one because the Saints got Ryan Ramczyk, that corner, Lattimore, and then those building pieces. The Colts have really good pieces that they got out of the 2018 draft class. Quentin Nelson, Darius Leonard, Rookie of the Year. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, I think this could be the start of something special. I don't like throwing out the word dynasty, but I think they're due to compete for the next 10 years, in my opinion.
Well, and like the thing that I find funny that you say is you're like, I don't like the word dynasty, and it's usually I would say it's a good thing to not like that word because, I mean, let's be honest.
It's
right
like
now,
dream team.
Well, exactly. Right now in my life, the only, like, the dynasties that I've lived through, you've got the Bulls in the 90s, I'll say the Yankees in the 90s also, a little bit of Atlanta with their dynasty in the NL, and then, like, the Patriots right now.
You're missing a big one.
And no, the Blackhawks in hockey. Is that the one I'm missing?
I mean, sure, but also the Lakers.
Oh, that's right. The Lakers, too, at Kobe and Shaq. So there's been a few, but it's like, if you kind of say, like, and Mark, I'll throw it to you, if you kind of say, like, oh, this is the start of a dynasty, it kind of has a cocky attitude to it that you don't really want. You want to be like, oh, let's stay non-cocky and then just do
you
our job.
want to be called a dynasty once you've won, like, your third championship.
True.
You know, when you can look back and be like, oh, yeah, I guess it was. You don't really want to do it once you've not won one or won your first one. I mean, look at the Seattle Seahawks. They win one, and then everyone's like, this is the start of a dynasty. They end up losing another one. And now look at the team. It fell apart. Those are the kind of things that can happen, especially if you get cocky. Look at any team who's ever declared themselves the dream team. It doesn't work. It'll fall
Eagles
apart.
in 2012.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it falls apart when you say you're a dream team. It's not very many teams can pull off a Super Bowl shuffle before the Super Bowl and then actually win it. It doesn't happen too often, but what I think of when it's really a dynasty, I don't know if we're truly going to get a dynasty out of these Colts. And the reason why, people are going to say Andrew Luck, he's 29, so like maybe people are going to point to that. That's possible.
Patrick Mahomes is
going to be right in there, and Tom Brady's still there. So we're ignoring the fact that there is a dynasty there at the moment. But I really see Andrew Luck and these Colts being very similar to a Peyton Manning and those Colts of always there and will probably win themselves a Super Bowl, maybe win themselves a couple Super Bowls, but not able to really be on that dynasty status because there's other good teams that are just in the way. And you know what? There are plenty of promising parts. I mean, you even look at a team like, and I'm going to go ahead and say this, even the Browns were looking really good last year. You get another good draft class in there, and that's a team that's also going to kind of be competing for this, hey, we're going to hang around and we're going to be a favorite in the AFC.
Well, and the thing I'm also going to throw out there, too, is because, like, you look at the Colts season, and we mentioned it, where early on they were 1-5 to start the year. And the thing I also look to is, look at that run game. You didn't have, to me, a solidified run game until week 11. Once Mack once he came on the scene, it was like
it's a completely
different Colts team. And the thing I look at for next year is if he comes out healthy to begin the year, this is not going to be a Colts team that starts out 1-5. Where this could be a team where, because I even look at it, and I know I play this game a lot here on the podcast, the woulda, coulda, shoulda game. But you look at that Bengal game, that could have been a win. You look at the Philly win, you lose by 4, that could have been a win. The overtime loss in Houston, and then even like the Jet game. That's 4 games right there that would have made you a 14-win team. And I know 14 wins is a lot, and it's like, okay, Ricky, maybe they wouldn't have been 14 wins, but if you're 14-2, odds are you're most likely going to be the number 1 seed in the AFC.
That's a pretty
playoff.
safe assumption, yeah.
And the thing I want to ask you, Shane, and this is more of like a next year's question, is do you think this is a Colts team that next year challenges the Chiefs and the Patriots for home field advantage and a playoff first-round bye next season?
I will answer it, but I'm gonna go off your last points about the Bengals, Texans, and the Jets game.
Go ahead.
The Bengals, we were driving late in the game. I think we would have won if Jack Doyle wouldn't have fumbled that ball. And then the Texans, like that 4th down call, everyone was criticizing Frank Reich for it. No doubt about that. Like, it was stupid how much people were calling for his head then already. But next year, what was the question again?
Next year, do you think this is going to be a team that challenges them for the first and second seed?
I think they could, but looking at the teams that we're playing the NFC South, so that's not going to be easy. So I think we can go 11-5, 12-4.
They'll probably compete, yeah.
I think our thing is in the playoffs is we need to, in order to even think about Super Bowl, we have to beat the Patriots because we've never been able to do that with luck.
Yeah,
never.
And that's an important part because the thing about the Colts too is in 2013 they beat the Chiefs, lose to the Patriots. In 2014, Bengals, Broncos, and then lose to the Patriots. This time they beat the Texans and then lose to the Chiefs. They can always, when they're in the playoffs, they get to some good teams, like the Patriots and the Chiefs, and that's what bounces them out. And that's what I look at with the Colts. They're this team that is always good. It's just, can they get to that point where they're going to be, that better team that beats a Patriots, that beats the Chiefs?
Well, and I mean, to go off of what Shane just said, not only do they play the NFC South next year, which Atlanta and Carolina will be in Indy, you're going to New Orleans to play the Saints, which is always a tough game. But to me, the thing that's even harder than that is you're playing the AFC West. And to me, I rather play the Raiders on the road and play Denver. Well, Denver on the road is weird because of the altitude. But the two teams that they've got on the road in those games, Kansas City, which you could probably say, well, you know what, we might be prepared for that because we got a taste of that this year in the playoffs. But it's going to be difficult to go into KC and then play the Chargers on the road. Although I don't think next year is not the year that their stadium is going to be finished, correct? It's not until the year after.
I think so.
Next. So they're probably still going to be in Carson. But still, I'd rather have the Chargers in Indy than going all the way out to the West Coast to play that game. And then, I look at it too. You got to play your own division, which is always tough. But on top of that, your random road game that you get is you've got to go into Pittsburgh. And I know Antonio Brown may not be there, but that is another tough road game to where this schedule is going to be different. But is this team going to be able, to me, the 4 road games I mentioned, and Shane, I'll let you kind of respond to it first. KC, LA, New Orleans, Pittsburgh. I know that a lot is happening. Free agency, the draft. But what are your thoughts just on those 4 home games for road games for 2019?
I think if we can go, I can see us going 2-2 in that stretch. If we put a good stretch together, I can see us beating. We're playing LA is the Chargers, right?
Yeah, we're playing the Chargers.
Yeah, I can see them beating Pittsburgh and LA.
It's possible.
But,
I mean, it's going to be tough to beat LA. Pittsburgh.
But
we'll see what happens with Pittsburgh after this offseason.
But every year is different, though. You don't know what happens in the offseason.
Yeah.
Right?
And that Pittsburgh team can look completely different after the offseason.
So facing the NFC South, facing Carolina might be easier than people think because of what has happened to Cam Newton.
Well, and that's the whole thing. Is he going to sit out? Is he not going to sit out? There's a lot of questions that still have to be answered. But the one thing I will ask you, Shane, kind of to put a little nice bow on this is any final thoughts? Usually I ask this to Mark, but I'll ask it to you. Any final thoughts or something that you think we haven't mentioned in this segment before we go ahead and wrap everything up?
I think a lot of, he goes when people mention the success of the Colts, they do not mention the DC of the Colts, Matt Eberflus, and what a brilliant job he has done, because he wasn't a Frank Reich hire.
Yeah, he was one. Correct me if I'm wrong. He was one of the ones that was there before, or was he a? Because Josh McDaniels didn't hire anyone. He left before.
No. He was one of the ones that was there before.
Okay, and he got kept on because of Frank Reich. Okay.
Frank.
And that's something that I know is like Fangio was one of those with the Bears, where it was like
he was a John Fox guy,
and all right, we're gonna keep him. And I mean that shows a kind of vote of confidence. If a new guy comes in and goes, you know what, I'm gonna keep you because you know what you're doing, because that defense towards the end, especially towards the end of the year, was really kind of picking up some steam, and why they, in my mind, won some games late. Do you have any final thoughts, Mark, before we wrap everything up?
I'm just very interested to see what they do in this draft, because, like I said, one more good draft class can do a lot for this team and set them up for one of those fancy Super Bowl windows that people like to talk about.
Well, this is where you guys come in. First off, before I ask you guys, Shane, thank you for being on the podcast, and thank you for being a patron and joining us on this podcast. But this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you think down below in that comment section. Colts fans, I want to hear from you, like we heard from Shane. Who deserves the most credit for the Colts' success, and what's your outlook on the future of the Indianapolis Colts?